afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We're standing by to bring you live coverage of the presentation of the Communiqué from the 111th meeting of the ECCB Monetary Council. The Council met earlier today to receive the report on monetary and credit conditions in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. The Council also received updates on the Caribbean Resilient Renewable Energy Infrastructure Investment Facility Project and the ECCU First Step Savings Account. afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We're standing by to bring you live coverage of the presentation of the Communiqué from the 111th meeting of the ECCB Monetary Council. The Council met earlier today to receive the report on monetary and credit conditions in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. The Council also received updates on the Caribbean Resilient Renewable Energy Infrastructure Investment Facility project and the ECCU First Step Savings Account. Afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We're standing by to bring you live coverage of the presentation of the Communiqué from the 111th meeting of the ECCB Monetary Council. The Council met earlier today to receive the report on monetary and credit conditions in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. The Council also received updates on the Caribbean Resilient Renewable Energy Infrastructure Investment Facility project and the ECCU First Step Savings Account. Afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We're standing by to bring you live coverage of the presentation of the Communiqué from the 111th meeting of the ECCB Monetary Council. The Council met earlier today to receive the report on monetary and credit conditions in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. The Council also received updates on the Caribbean Resilient Renewable Energy Infrastructure Investment Facility project and the ECCU First Step Savings Account. Afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We're standing by to bring you live coverage of the presentation of the Communiqué from the 111th meeting of the ECCB Monetary Council. The Council met earlier today to receive the report on monetary and credit conditions in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. The Council also received updates on the Caribbean Resilient Renewable Energy Infrastructure Investment Facility project and the ECCU First Step Savings Account. Afternoon and welcome to the presentation of the Communiqué from the 111th meeting of the ECCB Monetary Council. The Council met earlier today to receive the report on monetary and credit conditions in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. We now hand you over to Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Timothy N.J. Antoine.
Thank you very much. And a special good afternoon to the members of the media who have joined us. We have just concluded the meeting covering the 111th meeting of the Monetary Council of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. And as you're aware, the meeting was held right here at the boathouse of the Barbuda Ocean Club here in our sister island, Barbuda. In fact, I believe that Barbuda is the smallest island community within the OECS, or Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, that would have hosted the Monetary Council meeting. So this in itself is a major achievement for the island of Barbuda. The meeting actually welcomed Premier Cora Richardson Hodge to her first meeting as the Monetary Council member for Anguilla, following general elections in Anguilla in February of 2025. And we certainly commended her for becoming only the second head of state within the OECS, and obviously would be an example for all females within our sub-region and beyond as we seek to achieve greater gender equity. Meeting discussed the issue of monetary stability and received the governor's report on monetary credit and financial conditions within the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. The report provided global and Eastern Caribbean Currency Union updates on monetary, credit, and financial conditions and assessed their potential impact in the near to medium term. The governor indicated that the global economic environment has become considerably more uncertain, and against the backdrop of an anticipated decrease in global trade, the IMF has actually trimmed the projections for 2025 global economic growth to 2.8%. In the case of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, we are projecting a growth rate of about 3.5%, Governor. And in September of this year, we will be doing a further assessment, and if there are no further geopolitical pressures and other threats, then perhaps there could be an uptick in the projection. We are eternal optimists. There are others who may think that perhaps things will get worse, but we have to remain very hopeful and to continue to press for strong growth. And this is certainly in keeping with the big push as announced by Governor Antoine. In fact, our aspiration within the OECS Currency Union is to preside over growth rates of at least 7% in order to double our respective economies within the next 10 years. And we're hoping that we could get at least 10 years of economic stability with strong growth in order to ensure that our countries become more resilient and that we can provide resilient prosperity for the people of the OECS Currency Union, or Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Now, the EC currency remains strong. The back-end ratio currently is 97.5%, which is significantly above the 60% statutory requirement. And currently, the central bank holds reserves in the amount of $5.5 billion as of July 2025. And that is up from $5.4 billion as of October 2024. So within the last few months, the central bank would have added $100 million to its reserves, which shows that the performance has been exemplary, and especially when you look at the record profits of about $126.2 million, the governor and certainly his team, they should be commended for a stellar performance. Monetary, credit, and financial conditions in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union remain stable and accommodative. And as I said before, the ECCU growth outlook is projected to expand by about 3.3% in 2025, down from the previous projected range of about 3.5% to 4.5%. The governor would have shared in his report a distribution of the loans by economic activity, and we have seen very robust borrowings for whether in the sector, professional and other services, residential purchases, family and home construction, as well as other personal loans and public administration and social security. Now, we would have held discussions about the big push and methodologies to fund the big push. One of the ideas that we have deferred for in-depth discussions, even though we did have a very cursory discussion about it, is to see how the central bank could utilize a small portion of its reserves to catalyze investments within the currency union. Clearly, those securities, if the central bank should agree to proceed in that route, haven't done all the necessary studies, those securities will be in US dollars so that they remain a part of the central bank's reserves. But again, the bank will be doing a deep dive, and within a matter of months, we'll have a further conversation with council members to determine the viability of that proposal. We've also discussed too the investment regime of the central bank to see whether or not a portion of their assets could be invested in longer term securities to get an increased yield. Again, the bank will be doing further research and to advise accordingly. We also looked at the issue of financial stability within the region, and the Monetary Council was advised that the ECCU banking system remains resilient and stable with a high level of liquidity. And there's been an acceleration of private sector credit, driven primarily by increased lending to households, as I indicated before. And this has resulted in the most rapid expansion in household lending since 2020. We've been advised too that within the Eastern Caribbean stock market that countries within the region have been able to borrow up to $20 billion to date, and that in itself is a significant achievement which we should all celebrate. So clearly we have a stock market that is helping individuals and corporate entities, businesses to get good returns, and at the same time providing relatively inexpensive money for a number of individuals who invest in these bonds and other securities. We also looked briefly at the issue of lowering the risk profile of the CIP, that is essentially by investment or CBI programs within the region. As you're all aware, these programs have become the subject of some concerns by the North Americans and the Europeans. And there's such important sources of non-cash revenue that we're doing all we can to ensure that we strengthen them and to give our international partners the full commitment that these programs do not represent a threat to them in any way, and at the same time to preserve these programs so they can continue to contribute towards our development. And clearly the central bank is also monitoring and managing systemic risk within the financial system. And one of the directions given was the council directed ECCB to draft financial stability laws and regulations, which will provide the legal authority for the establishment of a regional financial stability committee. And that will include ECCB and all financial regulators in the currency union. On the issue of fiscal and debt sustainability, the ECCU fiscal situation showed signs of improvement in 2024 due to increased economic activity and stronger fiscal management. And that is certainly a good sign. We are seeing a reduction in the debt to GDP, and countries are doing better than certainly during the period of COVID. Things are improving incrementally. As at the end of January, as I said before, the RGSM achieved a milestone of $20 billion, and I have to repeat this for emphasis. And as you know, this was actually established back in 2001, so 24 years later, it would have achieved that milestone of raising $20 billion. On the issue of growth and competitiveness, we would have discussed the issue of the Resilient Renewable Energy Infrastructure Investment Facility. And this is a facility that will be funded in part by the World Bank and with support from Canada and other entities, including the Green Climate Fund. And the intention is to ensure that all 6 independent countries within the OECS sub-region, or within the currency union for that matter, that we all partake in this initiative. I mean, clearly, Antigua Barbuda sink its nevus because of our high per capita income and the fact that we have graduated. We will have to pay a higher premium, high interest than the other countries that qualify for the IDA loans. But we still believe that based on the guarantees that will be given, that we should be able to see a reduction in interest rate, and we should be able to get an interest rate that is reasonable and the type of maturity transformation that would not make the servicing of the associated debt for this facility onerous. On the issue of financial inclusion, which the central bank has been championing, we have made progress. We have passed legislation to ensure that no one is excluded. Every single citizen resident of the OECS should have a bank account. And we have established a limit of $36,000 in terms of the account limit. And we individuals are seeking to open a simple savings account with no more than $36,000 a year. We expect the commercial banks to significantly reduce the bureaucracy, and that just by producing, for example, one form of valid photo ID, that these individuals should be able to have a bank account and to be included within the financial system. So we expect the full cooperation and collaboration of the commercial banks within the currency union. And those are primarily the major issues that were discussed. The discussions were very robust. And I feel as though that we're now transitioning into some frame-breaking decisions that will add additional value to the central bank and the currency union as we utilize our creativity and our experience to bring value to the people of the OECS, or certainly the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Those are my initial comments. I'll now turn over to the governor, who may want to make some comments, and my other colleagues as well.
Thank you, Chairman. I will defer to you and stand by to assist with any questions if there are any. And perhaps if any council member, including our newest member and an outgoing chair, wishes to comment, perhaps we could give her the floor. Yes.
And good afternoon to all. I'd like to first thank the Prime Minister, Honorable Gaston Brown, and people of Antigua and Barbuda for their warm hospitality over the past 2 days. It is clear, although my time as chair of the Monetary Council has been brief, it is clear that there has been a lot of work that has been conducted over the past year, and that there is much more work to be done. I want to thank the governor of the ECCB Bank, Governor Antoine, and the entire ECCB staff for their hard work. And I know that over the coming year that they will continue with the hard work and the success that we've been experiencing. Those of you who would have listened to the remarks made by Governor Antoine last night, as well as myself, would have heard of the accomplishments that have been made to date. And we look forward to continuing all that's been laid in terms of the foundation, and we'll continue to build on that. So thank you to all.
I also wish to add my thank you to Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda. And I must also say that the hospitality that we have received over the past 2 days on both islands, Antigua and Barbuda, has been very good. Again, it's my first time on Barbuda, and so far, so good. In terms of the robust discussions that we've had today at the 111th Monetary Council meeting, I think, as was said earlier on, the discussions were very robust, and the implications of those discussions has long-term implications for the region. Again, I want to thank the St. Caribbean Central Bank and its staff for the support that they're giving us in this meeting, and we do hope that we can continue to move ahead apace, because based on the achievement that we have received thus far, I know that it's common to say when you have performed well, more work will come your way and so on. And so I believe despite the challenges that we are going to be facing, Central Bank is going to be there supporting the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. Again, I greet all members of the Council and all members of the media here in the Currency Union and around the world. So we have the first set of questions coming in from ABS. So I will propose to address a few of those. Question 1. Has the Council held discussion on Prime Minister Brown's call for the Central Bank to help catalyze further economic development in the sub-region through investing some of its reserves in US dollar-denominated securities? Are there any concerns surrounding this? So just to be clear, the Central Bank is already very heavily invested in US securities to the tune of about $2 billion US. The call by Prime Minister Brown last evening when he assumed the chair for us to look at other possibilities, including the use of a limited portion of reserve, is now under study by our central bank. And as Prime Minister Brown, the chairman, just indicated, we will have a follow-up discussion as part of the big push and financing the big push on this issue. So we have some homework to do, which we will do, and we will, of course, bring our views, our findings, and our recommendations back to the Council in due course. The second question, has there been any discussion regarding whether adjustments are needed to the minimum savings rate in the currency union? At this juncture, the minimum savings rate remains at 2%. The Monetary Council approved a recommendation from the Central Bank to retain the minimum savings rate in the currency union at 2%. There may be a time in the future when that is adjusted, but that time has not yet come. And by the way, I just want to say en passant that this rate of 2% is one of the highest in the Caribbean. If you look around the region, most countries have liberalized their savings rate, which basically means the market determines. And if you check, most of those rates are now under 1%. So savers in the region, the currency union, are benefiting from 2%. And of course, in due course, we will, every meeting we review that and we bring a recommendation to the Council. The recommendation, which was approved by the Monetary Council, is to retain the minimum savings rate at 2%. Third question, what can the Council do to stimulate greater private sector credit, especially as this will be critical to the big push for growth throughout the currency union? The questioner, or the pose of the question, is correct. We believe credit is essential for the big push. What has the Council approved? What has the Central Bank done? Two things. The Credit Bureau, which of course is now being rolled out, started in Antigua and Barbuda. You were the first country in Antigua and Barbuda to go live. Other countries are going to go live this year. And what we know for a certain fact, wherever a credit bureau has been established, credit has increased. So the Credit Bureau has two roles. It helps with credit management, credit risk management for financial institutions and borrowers, but it also helps to expand credit. And I should say, a related benefit is to price risk. I believe some people are probably paying higher interest rates than they should pay. But in the absence of a credit bureau to ascertain and price risk, to assess and price risk, basically everyone is assumed to be high risk, or many people, not everyone, is assumed to be high risk, which means you pay a high interest rate. And our view is that that potentially could mean more credit and potentially better terms. So the first thing is the credit bureau. The second is the partial credit guarantee program. as you heard, that program has now done 228 guarantees, including a value of about $22.5 million in loan value and a guarantee value of about $17.5 million. These guarantees are for small businesses. These guarantees are for startups. These guarantees are for people in the creative sector, for example. So creatives, fishers, farmers, small business, tech, cultural industries, those are some of the people we are seeing coming through for those programs. And those are the people we want to benefit. They are underserved or unserved. And therefore, the Partial Credit Guarantee Program is an important addition in terms of assisting them with their aspirations and making credit available to them. The fourth question is, are there any concerns regarding the health of the financial sector in the currency union? As we reported, the financial system is stable and resilient. I did say that we are concerned about relatively high non-performing loans. So that's a measure of asset quality. At the moment, non-performing loans in the currency union is around 9.9%. We generally want to see it under 5%. So we have seen a slight reduction from the last reporting. In February, I think we reported around 10.1. It is marginally less, which is a good thing, because we want it to be lower, not higher, down to 9.9%. Of course, if you put that in raw terms, you're talking about $1.46 billion in bad loans. So we do have a concern about that. The other general concern would be the climate risk. This is, of course, a risk across all sectors, including the financial sector. But we know most of our development is on the coast. That's where we live. That's where we invest. And therefore, as a central bank, we've taken steps to strengthen our climate risk frameworks to ensure that we essentially, the banks, the commercial entities, take steps to assess those risks and begin to build it. It's still early in the game where that is concerned, but we have been doing a number of sessions to build capacity, first within the central bank and with the non-bank regulators, and then with the financial institutions themselves. And I want to recognize the collaboration we've done with agencies like Agence Française de Développement, which is a French development agency. It's basically based in Paris, but they have an office, a regional office in Martinique. They've worked with us on helping us what we call greening the financial system. That includes looking at climate risks. And the final question from ABS is, to what extent, if at all, has the bank revised its growth forecast for the region in light of the global trade and geopolitical shifts affecting the region? So our growth number has been reduced. As the chairman indicated, the IMF, which looks at the global economy, has reduced its global forecast growth for the global economy from 3.5%, say, to 2.8% this year. And a lot of that has to do with the policy shifts, trade fragmentation, tariff regimes, and so on, and some of the trade wars that we're seeing. And as a consequence, we have also reduced our growth forecast to around 3.3% as opposed to 3.5%, 4% at the beginning of the year. So it has had an effect on our growth forecast. So those are the questions from ABS. I'll pause to see, Chairman, I don't know if you want to weigh in, and I'll pause to see if there are any other questions coming in. Any more? Apparently no other questions at this stage. So there's another one? Yes, please. Yes, please.
Thank you, Governor, and good afternoon to yourself. Good afternoon to the distinguished members of the head table as well, and special good afternoon to the new chairman, Prime Minister Brown. Garfield Burford, ABS Television. Thanks so much, Governor, for answering the questions I posed earlier. This one specifically for Prime Minister Brown as the new chair of the Monetary Council. In terms of the Credit Bureau, now operating in Antigua, Barbuda, your initial assessment of it, and what would be your recommendations or your comments, advice to the other members of the currency union as they get ready to have the Credit Bureau rolled out in their countries? Thanks.
Yeah, well, I've been encouraging all of my colleagues to embrace the Credit Bureau because as the governor indicated, it is one of the ways in which you could expand your credit base. I mean, when you have a credit rating agency that could assist in providing a credit rating for creditors, that in itself helps to increase credit to reduce the risk of financial institutions lending to individuals who have bad credit. We know that in the previous dispensation, the individuals who had bad credit, but because you didn't have that comprehensive credit rating system or having a credit bureau, they were able to go to other banks and repeat the same bad credits. So it's a very important part of the financial infrastructure of any country, and I certainly will continue to encourage all of the countries within the currency union to establish the credit bureau as soon as possible. I'm told so far that we have seen an uptick in credit in Antigua and Barbuda, and we are pretty sure that we, within the upcoming months and years, will see real tangible benefits as a result of the operations of that credit bureau in Antigua and Barbuda.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And could I ask one more, if I may be so, if you could grant me one other opportunity. A few months ago, there had been concerns about the expenditure on the official residence for the governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. Of course, this is the official residence, so whomever occupies the position. Perhaps there had been more heat than light on this issue. Perhaps a lot of emotions came into it. With the passage of time, hopefully, there is more light to be placed on this issue. Was there any discussion on that? And if so, what's the latest? Thanks.
Well, yes, we would have held discussions on the issue. What we recognize in the first instance is that the bill of quantity that was done was flawed. And we noticed too that whereas the tendered process would have literally mandated that the lowest bid be accepted, at the end of the day, that bid was also flawed because the other three bids came in excess of $20 million. So, there were issues in terms of the lowest bid being a significant outlier. And we felt that perhaps that the quantity survey at the time should have picked up that particular anomaly. So one thing I can say for sure, there is no evidence of any malpractice by anyone who was responsible for monitoring this particular project. In fact, it went through all of the necessary procedures. For example, the bids went to tender and they were selected accordingly. Bids for the consultants, for the contractor, architect, and all of the procedures were followed. This particular project was managed primarily by the board of directors. As you know, the council itself and council members, we concentrate primarily on policy formulation. And the history of the operations of the council is such that it does not get involved in project management. So you did not have that regular, let's say, feeding of information to the council. In fact, to the best of my knowledge, the issue of the cost of construction of the governor's residence was never a formal item on the agenda. But we felt, however, that council members should have been kept informed via the directors, and that is where we felt that there was some weakness in terms of sharing information at the time. So there has been a series of recommendations that were made to strengthen the reporting mechanism and the overall governance of projects that may be pursued by the central bank in the near future. And there's also a requirement, for example, that any project in excess of $10 million that it should be fed up to the council, and they must get a no objection from the council before they pursue any such project. Now, the idea is not for the council to micromanage these projects. I mean, we expect that between the consultants that we employ and the board of directors and so on, that they have the competence to manage these projects. But at the same time, we are strengthening the reporting mechanisms, and at the same time to ensure that amounts in excess of $10 million that the council members should be kept up to date routinely. So one of the major outcomes out of this is that the governance framework will be strengthened, And whereas before, the information caught us somewhat flat-footed, in the future we should have the information. And I don't know that, if, for example, that we did not have a flawed bill of quantity, and the fact too that one of the bids clearly was outlier. I don't know that the building necessarily would have cost less than the $20+ million. So there's no evidence to suggest otherwise. I was also making the point to some of my colleagues, and as you know, I've operated within the construction and land development space for a number of years. And depending on the contractors, depending on the size of the property, depending on the quality of the property, and sometimes too depending on the means of the developer or the person who is literally constructing the property, the price varies. So there's no specific or fixed price. Take, for instance, you have some contractors who work on Jumbi Bay in Antigua, right here at PLH, and they will charge up to $1,500 per square foot. But if they build a similar property for me or you, they probably charge us an EC. So I'm saying that to say that, this notion that, there were significant excesses, I can't say that that was proven. And what I know for sure, having examined the processes, there's no evidence of any wrongdoing, certainly not by the governor or any of the directors, or any evidence of any collusion involving the various experts. What's that? And by the way, it's 10 million EC for the no objection, just in case I said US. So anything exceeding 10 million EC, they will have to seek a no objection from the council members or from the council. Well, if there are no other questions, would have meant that the governor did a very good job. My colleagues.
Sorry, Prime Minister.
Yes, sir. Go right
One
ahead.
last question. One last question, and sorry if nobody else wanted to ask. Just an update on the EC dollar and the efforts to have new images placed on the EC currency to replace the late Queen Elizabeth. What's the latest on that? Was that discussed? And if so, who are the likely contenders to be placed on the EC dollar? Thanks.
It was not discussed because the council has already determined that matter. I think maybe almost a year now, the council made the decision to replace the image of the UK monarch with the images of our heroes, nationals of the currency union, and that has now been determined. So on the coins, we've already made a determination of the new look, and that is going to be processed. And on the notes, each country was asked to identify, and the council formally approved the names of those persons. I'm not at liberty to disclose that. The big reveal will come at some later stage, so Mr. Woodford, we'll have to hold you in suspense for a little longer. But it would not be imminent in the sense that we still have quite a bit of notes, current notes in stock of the current inventory. And so what we've agreed is that as these are phased out, we will phase in the new notes. I therefore do not expect us before perhaps early 2027 maybe to see the first set of new notes. We'll update that timeline, but that is probably the earliest you will see some new notes. And it won't be all of them at the same time. So, we have denominations 5, 10, 20, 50, 100. As they finish, then we will bring them in. But also keep in mind, the polymer substrate, which we introduced in July of 2019, lasts longer than the paper or cotton that we had before. So it lasts 2.5, 3 times longer. So that is working as intended. It's also saving the central bank money as well. But it means that we have to wait a bit longer until those basically have become, what we call unfit. We can no longer keep them in circulation. And when that happens, the new notes with our images, our nationals, our heroes, those will appear on our currency. So we are working with our mint, printer of notes on those new series. but they are not imminent because of the fact we have current stock levels for all of our notes and coins.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Burford. And if there are no further questions from the press and no other comments from my distinguished colleagues, then we'll bring this press conference to a close. And we thank you very much for your participation. Thank you.